In Venezuela, the youth came out to celebrate National Youth Day in the country, praising recent achievements for the sector and vowing to maintain their demand for the U.S. release of President Nicolás Maduro. Let's see more in the following report by correspondent Brian Mir.
On February 12th, Venezuela's National Day of Youth, tens of thousands of high school and university students took to the streets of Caracas to protest against the U.S. government's kidnapping of the nation's president and first lady.
Today our greatest battle is not with the rifle, it's in books. It is in the historical consciousness of our youth and in defending our peace. That is why today we students march with joy, but at the same time we march to demand the prompt return of our constitutional president, our builder of victories, Nicolás Maduro, and our first combatant, Celia Flores. Today the youth support him, and we also march with the same spirit as Jose Felix Rivas and Robert Serra. Let the students go forth, let the student organization go forth, and let the Venezuelan Student Federation go forth.
On February 12, 1814, when Spanish forces attacked the city of Caracas, thousands of students joined the battle. After a day of fighting, the Royalists fled to the mountains. It was a key victory in the War of Independence, and in memory of the students who fought, the day is now known as National Youth Day. This year, students celebrated gains in public education during years of Bolivarian governance and clamored for freedom for their kidnapped president.
We march for peace. We march because we want them to release our president Nicolás Maduro and our first combatant deputy Celia Flores. We are in the streets of Caracas defending peace, defending democratic coexistence, defending the recognition of all sectors. Here are the youth asking for the release of the president and also defending their future and defending their education and defending the Bolivarian political process that we have consolidated over 30 years and the full freedom that Bolívar and Chávez gave us.
Across Venezuela, huge crowds continue to come out on the streets on a near-daily basis, demanding freedom for kidnapped President Nicolás Maduro and First Lady Celia Flores, and to show their support for the Bolivarian government led by Acting President Delcy Rodriguez. Brian Mir, teleSUR, Caracas.
Venezuela's acting president Delcy Rodriguez said on Thursday that her country was ready for a long-term energy partnership with the United States. During an interview to the U.S. TV network NBC, the Venezuelan leader reaffirmed her government's commitment to building a solid economy and a cutting-edge energy sector, setting out a roadmap focused on international cooperation and the well-being of the Venezuelan people. The president also emphasized that Venezuela is going through a historic moment of strategic positioning, underlining that the country is becoming once again an indispensable player in the energy security of the hemisphere and the world. She also confirmed that she has received a formal invitation to visit the United States, which is planned once the basis for mutual cooperation is consolidated. She also reiterated that Nicolás Maduro remains the legitimate president of the country.
Yes, without a doubt, President Nicolás Maduro is the legitimate president of Venezuela. Both President Maduro and First Lady Celia Flores are innocent.
The United Nations urged the international community to reject the U.S. interventionist actions against Cuba. In an open statement, specialists and experts of the international body condemned Washington's executive order, which labeled the Caribbean island as an unusual threat against the United States and said it was an argument without credibility designed to justify the extraordinary use of coercive powers by the U.S. government. The text also reminds that the executive order was not approved by the United Nations Security Council, and so it does not have any basis whatsoever in collective security, representing a serious violation of international law. The Cuban government thanked the United Nations for its solidarity with the Caribbean nation in the face of the U.S. aggression. Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez wrote an X that experts from the United Nations Human Rights Council condemned the executive order of the United States government, which imposes a fuel blockade against Cuba. They described these actions as a serious violation of international law and urged the U.S. government to immediately revoke the executive order and end the coercive measures against Cuba. In their joint statement, the United Nations experts also called on all states not to recognize or validate these U.S. actions against Cuba. The complex energy scenario Cuba faces, aggravated by the United States blockade on fuel suppliers, the island keeps achieving record solar energy generation. In this regard, Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez took to his social media X to highlight how the generation of over 900 megawatts of solar photovoltaic energy in Cuba during midday hours is part of the result of the government program for the recovery of the national electric system and demonstrates the firm commitment to achieving sovereignty in this sector amid the U.S. oil blockade against the country. So in this context, the government of Mexico announced the opening of collection centers to gather essential supplies for shipment to Cuba. The ruling party, Morena, together with civil society and various organizations, are cooperating in the collection of solidarity aid, thereby reaffirming Mexico's humanitarian and fraternal work toward the Caribbean island. Federal leaders shared on social media the list of supplies that the Cuban people require in light of the coercive measures imposed by the United States. Previously, 2 ships of the Mexican Navy arrived in the Greater Antilles carrying nearly 814 tons of food and hygiene products. The islands of Okinawa were the site of Japan's infamous system of sexual slavery known as comfort women. Towards the end of World War II, Okinawa has remained heavily militarized by the United States and Japan ever since, and women continue to suffer the consequences of this reality. This is the second report on the impacts of militarization in Okinawa from our correspondent in China, Mauro Ramos.
1931 to 1945, Japan victimized at least 400,000 women across various Asian countries and regions in a massive sexual slavery system that became known as comfort women. The system was established in every region invaded by the Japanese military. Thus, when Japan mobilized around 100,000 soldiers to Okinawa in 1944, it also installed sexual slavery centers on the islands of this archipelago with women from several Asian countries. This is teleSUR's second report on the consequences of militarization in Okinawa. In 2008, on the small island of Miyako, local residents decided to build the Arirang Memorial in honor of the women who were victims of the Japanese Empire. The chosen name comes from a Korean song. Korean women made up the majority in Miyako and will sing this song while washing clothes. The site features tributes in 12 languages representing the countries from which they were abducted. Kiyome Uesato co-chairs the Miyako Island Residents Association No More Missile Bases. She explains the origin of the monument.
During the war, about 30,000 Japanese soldiers came to this island. Along with them came Korean women, forcibly brought from the Korean peninsula, forced to become comfort women for the Japanese army, suffering inhumane treatment at the comfort stations. Upon learning of these facts, especially through the testimonies of many residents of Miyako Island, we understood that such a tragedy must never be repeated. That is why we decided to erect a monument to record and preserve this history as a warning to future generations.
Professor Su Jiliang is the first Chinese scholar to study the atrocities against women victimized by Japan. In 1999, he founded the Chinese Research Center on Comfort Women at Shanghai Normal University. Together with Professor Chen Lifei, Su Jiliang traveled throughout China, identifying more than 350 survivors.
In August 1945, when Japan faced defeat, the military completely destroyed evidence. Much was lost. Since the 1990s, we have been searching for survivors one by one. Many victims of this brutal sexual violence could not speak out, even at the end of their lives. In China, we identified 358 survivors, and 24 of them went to Tokyo to sue Japan. They lost the case, but the courts still recognized their status as victims.
Militarization in Okinawa continues to impact women's lives. In May 2024, a U.S. Navy sailor attempted to commit sexual violence against a young woman in Okinawa. Soldier J.Mo Clayton was sentenced to 7 years in prison by the Naha District Court. Keiko Yonaha from the No More Battle of Okinawa movement says that assaults against women happen much more frequently than is reported.
Beyond these issues, there are problems such as sexual assaults against women. Not long ago, a 16-year-old girl was sexually assaulted. There are even cases that escalated to murder, rape cases. Although people generally don't talk about them publicly, they occur quite frequently. As long as US military bases exist, these crimes will not disappear. One could almost say that most of Okinawa's general problems stem from the US military bases.
At 76 years old, Hayako Shimizu also co-chairs the Miyako Residents Association Against the Militarization of the Island. In January 2026, the group completed 3,000 days of protests against the continuous expansion of military installations on the small island of about 55,000 inhabitants.
To ensure that the same tragedy does not repeat itself and to prevent Miyako Island from becoming a battlefield, we have maintained this struggle persistently. This has indeed been the work of our group here, with a single purpose, to prevent history from repeating itself and to keep Miyako away from war, decisively.
From Beijing, teleSUR, Mauro Ramos.
In Venezuela, the youth came out to celebrate National Youth Day in the country, praising recent achievements for the sector and vowing to maintain their demand for the U.S. release of President Nicolás Maduro. Let's see more in the following report by correspondent Brian Meir.
On February 12th, Venezuela's National Day of Youth, tens of thousands of high school and university students took to the